Part 66. Online games, I really don't want to have unlimited fusion. Author, 7 years. Chapter 651. Chapter 651. This is not scientific. Suchen said, it's nothing, I just feel a little aggrieved. He. Su, who sat next to Suchen, looked at the villagers farming in the distance, and said, according to your father's and my temper, I would have rushed to Jiguan Ridge by now. But I only have one son like you. After all, it's just a matter between the juniors. If it develops above us, it won't be a matter of 1 or 2 people dying. After all, in this martial arts mountain world, besides me, Suhu and Wu Bear, there is also Lu Sandeo from Centipede Mountain. The father and son sat on the bluestone slab, looking at the mountains and fields in the distance, silent for a long time. Lunch was a large pot of stewed chicken, which Suhu specially prepared for his son. The 2 stewed chickens were estimated to weigh 4 kilograms. Suhu Chen actually ate everything, and his stomach was just full. After eating and drinking, Suchen went to the only blacksmith shop in the village. The blacksmiths were a pair of masters and apprentices, the master was Sutai, and the apprentice was Suxiaoer. Usually the master and the apprentice made hoes, kitchen knives, etc. for the surrounding villagers. Sometimes they also made swords, guns, swords, axes, etc. for the village. Their skills were good. Suchen walked in, said hello, and sat down casually. Suchen, I often went here when I was a child. Sutai once wanted to take Suchen as his apprentice. The relationship was too familiar, so there was no need to be polite. Sutai just asked Suchen to pour tea and rest. Uncle Tai, how much steel can be made in one day? Suchen asked. Sutai was shirtless, revealing his dark and shiny muscles. He and his disciple Yu Hao beat the red-hot iron on the anvil rhythmically, and said without raising his head. Hey! Steel can't be made casually. It takes hundreds of refinements to become steel. Hey ho hey ho. Generally, it's only 4 or 5 kilograms at most at one time, but that's not enough. Apprentice Suxiaoer said with a smile. Does it take hundreds of refinements to become steel? Have you ever seen anything about steel frying or steel pouring on the internet? Suchen thought to himself, what did Guangang say that he saw before? The steel filling process is the main method of blade steel production in ancient my country. It uses pig iron and wrought iron, a fried product with a high carbon content, as raw materials, heats them above the melting point of pig iron, and combines them to form steel. I wipe it. Suchen was stunned by the entry that suddenly popped out of his mind. When did my memory get so good? Even the punctuation marks are clearly remembered. Records of steel filling in ancient China first appeared in the late Eastern Han Dynasty Quanho Han Wen Volume 91 Wankan, 177-21, 7. Inscription says the yin and yang are in harmony with each other, and the troops are prepared. Among them, Guan means Guanlian, and pleat originally refers to the pleats on clothes, but here it should refer to the multi-layer stacking and repeated folding of steel materials. Filling the folds several times means filling them multiple times. Depend on. This unscientific. Suchen was frightened by the information that popped into his mind. Except for the unclear part of the ancient text in the middle, I almost remembered the rest. In other words, as long as you have seen it, you can remember it? Suchen was eager to find evidence, and he tried to recall the differences between pig iron, wrought iron, and steel that his university teacher had taught him. The carbon content of pig iron is 2% to 4.3%, the carbon content of wrought iron is less than 0.02%, and the carbon content of steel is 0.02% to 1.7%. Unscientific. I even remember the numbers so clearly. Underscore. Online games, I really don't want to have unlimited fusion. Author, 7 years. Chapter 652. Chapter 652, The memory is surprisingly good. Suchen thought back to what his high school Chinese teacher said in class one day. It's the last semester of senior year, and you don't have much time. When writing essays, don't think about anything new or unconventional. Be steady and down to earth and get more than 40 points. Even if it is the same, even if you are criticized for 8-legged essays, your task in the essay is considered completed. Oh no, it's so clear. Think about it again. Well, Master Xing's Shaolin football. Shaolin Kung Fu is so good. So good. Shaolin Kung Fu stick. Awesome. I am an Iron Head Gong. Invincible Iron Head skill. Ah. Don't worry, I won't watch any more movies in the future. Hey. Chen'er, what are you thinking about with such an expression? Uncle Tai's voice sounded. Su Xiao'er also laughed slyly beside him and said, I'm afraid I don't miss the girl. Hey, my mouth is watering. Su Chen came back to his senses, wiped the corners of his mouth, and said nonchalantly, Uncle Tai, I know there is a steel-making method called steel filling. Filling steel. Su Tai threw the iron piece into the furnace again, turned around and took a sip of water, and said nonchalantly, what should I say? It is to combine pig iron and wrought iron to make steel. Su Xiao'er said with a smile, isn't this just Tuan Gang, this is the method we use to make steel. Well. Su Chen is stuck, it turns out you can do it. Then why do you only make 4 or 5 kilograms of steel a day, so little? Su Xiao'er wiped his sweat and said the raw and cooked iron clips are red hot and need to be forged. After that, they will continue to be reheated and then forged. This process requires no less than 100 forgings, so it is called steel made by 100 times. It's just that our manpower is limited. Master and I can only train 4 to 5 kilograms a day at most. No more than we can handle. That's it. It's not that they don't understand technology, but that the production capacity of this era is weak. Putting aside the issue of production capacity for the first time, Su Chen then asked, have Tai Bo and the second brother ever made gun barrels? It's like a firecracker. Hey. Su Tai smiled and said nothing. Su Xiao'er touched his head and said embarrassedly. I tried to make it a few months ago. The steel is good, but I couldn't roll out a pipe without gaps. In the end, the barrel exploded. Fortunately, I wasn't injured. Chen'er, if Uncle Tai is nagging you here, don't turn a deaf ear. Su Tai said solemnly, these fire guns and muskets are very powerful, but country craftsmen like us are not as good as the craftsmen of the government, and we are most likely to be in danger. Even those craftsmen often have problems with the barrel exploding. You are still young and easily impulsive. Please listen to Uncle Tai's advice and never play with such things. Well. Su Chen stood awkwardly in the field, and Su Xiao'er also blushed and lowered his head. After coming out of the blacksmith shop, Su Chen's mind was a little confused. He went out and ran to the watchtower next to the village wall to enjoy the wind and look at the scenery. The various casting, processing, chemistry, and physics knowledge that I learned in high school and college kept running through my mind, coupled with the countless local techniques I had read on the internet and in novels. All kinds of information came flooding in, and I couldn't stop it. Su Chen knew that this was because he was unwilling to do so, and the countless impulses in his heart could not be calmed down. Yes. As a modern person who has just time traveled to such a chaotic era in the late Ming dynasty, what passionate man wouldn't want to establish a great career? Feeler reminds you, 3 things about reading: collect, recommend, and share. N. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Online games, I really don't want to have unlimited fusion. Author, 7 years. Chapter 653. Chapter 653, Industrial Overlord starting from hydraulic machines. What's more, my memory suddenly became as effective as a computer hard drive. I can come up with whatever I want. God has given me such magical powers. If I don't do something in my career, I will be struck by lightning. Thinking of this, Suchen suddenly had clear thoughts and his consciousness was extremely clear. Compared with what we have to do in the future, being plotted against by that brat Wu Lin is nothing at all. When my brother establishes the industrial civilization of the 17th century, squeezing him to death is no different from squeezing an ant to death. Wa ha ha ha. Suchen's arrogant laughter suddenly sounded in Suji's eye. If you want to establish an industrial civilization, you must first solve the problem of production capacity. The harbinger of British industrial civilization all started with improving productivity. Steam engines have never been done before, and it is not easy to aim too high. Hydraulic machines and wind turbines can still be designed. After all, I have a bachelor's degree in mechanical design, manufacturing, and automation. Even if you didn't learn well back then, you can still review it now with the help of your extremely powerful memory. Good. Just start with the hydraulic machine. Don't Taibo and the others think that their manpower is limited. I'll give them a hydraulic forging machine. I'm hungry again. Suchen touched his growling stomach and wondered why he felt hungry so quickly. He felt hungry less than 2 hours after finishing lunch. I had no choice but to run back and ask Aunt Lu in the kitchen for food. After filling his stomach, Suchen came to the stream closest to the village. This stream gathers spring water from several surrounding mountains. The water flow is very large, and the surrounding terrain is not so steep. With a little effort, a large piece of flat land can still be created. Now it is unrealistic to persuade everyone to come here to prepare the land. After all, I am still young at 15 years old, and I have never established a convincing tall image since I was a child. I have no choice but to fool a few friends and do it together. Suchen carefully walked a long way along the stream. Finally, I chose a relatively optimal location based on the terrain and the flow of water. I used my pocket knife to carve a few circles on the tree as marks, and piled a few piles of rocks on the ground as marks. I roughly measured the width of the stream. It was about 10 meters wide. It was almost as wide as a small river. Considering the height of the terrain, the water flow was relatively fast. Suchen walked up the stream and found the source of the mountain spring along several main tributaries. Most of them are springs gushing out from gaps in rocks or holes. The water flow should be relatively stable, and there will be no flash floods or dry seasons due to seasonal changes. After all, Suchen's body at this time had lived here for 15 years and had never seen the stream dry. There had been flash floods once or twice, and they only happened when the weather was bad. Then when selecting the location of the hydraulic machine room, you must also consider the occurrence of flash floods. Suchen thought for a moment and moved the marked address upwards. This way, even if a flash flood broke out, the upstream traffic would be limited and not as scary as the downstream. After doing this, Suchen went to fool his friends. Erden. Dog. Come here and go do something big with me. Suchen had enough momentum, and the two guys were indeed fooled. They were both 14 or 15 years old, and they were at the age when they were eager to be recognized by adults. After hearing the young master's words, he immediately dropped the slingshot and followed him. Online games, I really don't want to have unlimited fusion. Author, 7 years. Chapter 654. Chapter 654, Follow the young master's family to do great things. You two go and call Huzi, Xianyan, and little scholar over, and tell them that I have something important to do to them, Suchen ordered. Okay. Erden agreed quickly. Guzu ran over with a smile and asked expectantly, Brother Chenur, what's the big business? It's not just about hunting birds and walking dogs, it's definitely a big business that will shock adults. Suchen continued to fool around. Remember, ask each of them to bring a hoe. Good. The two of them quickly went to call for help. Suchen looked at the young man running happily and said silently in his heart, brave young man, fly. Not long after, Suchen led his friends to the marketplace with high spirits. Along the way, aunts, uncles would ask questions. Why? Dog, where are you going with your hoe? Don't be afraid that your father will break your legs. Haha, young master, what are you doing here? No matter how they asked or what method they used, the young men all held their heads high and replied loudly, follow the young master's family and do great things. Holy crap! Suchen lowered his head all the way and didn't dare to say anything. Why don't these firecrackers keep a low profile? Chirping all the way to the marketplace beside the stream, Suchen pointed to a small bank near the stream and said, well, take this piece of land. As Suchen spoke, he drew a circle on the ground with his shoe. Level this land. Okay. Erden picked up the hoe and dug with a bang. The little scholar was thin and frail, dragging the hoe and panting, and asked, young master, what are you doing to prepare the land? Don't ask, you will know when the time comes. Remember, everything I ask you to do next is an absolute secret, and you must not let outsiders hear it. Suchen warned. If he didn't say so, I'm afraid the cow would have blown up to the sky before Suchen could finish his work. By then, the hydraulic machine wouldn't be able to make it, and that would be ridiculous. 14-year-old or 15-year-old, the young man was digging hard with a hoe, and Suchen often pointed out that they should pay attention to safety. The land that Suchen wanted to level was not very big, only 2 square meters. 3 hoes were broken, and several people were sweating profusely from exhaustion. Lily finally leveled the land initially. Lianyan, Hyuze, and Erden looked sad. Suchen patted them on the shoulders and said, it's okay. I'll take these 3 hoes to Tibana for repair. When the time comes, I'll ask you to take them back. If your parents want to ask where the hoe is, just say that the young master borrowed it from his family, and it will be fine. After hearing the promise from Xiaodong's family, everyone regained their interest. Following Xiaodong's family, they stepped hard on the dug trench and the ground, and then walked back home happily in the sunset. The leveled ground and the dug trench they are all used to make foundations. Although Suchen is only making a demonstration hydraulic machine, all aspects cannot be ambiguous. Only when adults realize that Suchen, can complete a qualified project independently can let everyone be convinced. From now on, Suchen, will be able to do things easily. It is spring now, and the fields are busy. Except for the 5 boys Suchen called away, the other boys and girls are all working in the fields. Yes, they don't have time to play around with the young master's family. Online games, I really don't want to have unlimited fusion. Author, 7 years. Chapter 655. His stomach growled with hunger, and Suchen sat down at the dining table covered in sweat and stinking, grabbed the chicken drumstick and gnawed it wildly. The father was drinking wine and watching his son eating with a smile. For a growing boy, being able to eat is a blessing. After eating, Suchen took a shower and called all the boys and girls who were fighting insects, counting stars, and chasing each other to the martial arts training ground. He used a door panel next to the bluestone as a blackboard, a clod of soil as chalk, and lit 2 oil lamps next to it to start his teaching career. Classmates. Now, I am a teacher and you are all students, do you understand? Suchen shouted while looking at the big children laughing and joking together. Brother Chenur, I heard from Xianyan that you guys went to do something big this afternoon. What big thing is it? The cousin of Uncle Liu's family asked curiously. Has the young master done something big? Squint, tell me quickly, what's the big deal? Quiet. Suchen touched his forehead and shouted with a headache. What a big deal. Don't listen to that squinting paparazzi. Everyone is not allowed to speak now. I said, now I am a teacher, I want to teach you something, and you must study it seriously. That. Shut up. Suchen threw a piece of dirt over. After a lot of effort, the gang finally calmed down a little, although there was still a quiet buzzing sound coming from below. At this time, Suchen reached an unprecedented resonance with the teacher who used to regulate class discipline. Teacher, thank you for your hard work. Suchen scratched the door panel vertically and said, this symbol is 1. Hey, young master, teacher. Under Suchen's glare, the little scholar finally changed his name and called him teacher. That one, it's not like that, it's sideways. Suchen nodded and said, the little scholar is right, our Chinese characters are one is indeed horizontal, but what I want to give you today is not a Chinese character, but a brand new arithmetic symbol. Next, you just have to learn what I say. Today I will teach you how to recognize these symbols and how to use these symbols to express some quantities. This is 2, which means 2 ones. For example, we have 2 hands, and this 2 is represented by the symbol. Next, Suchen introduced the numbers from 1 to 9 and 0 to them all the way. A few adults came over to take a look and laugh before leaving. On the other hand, a few aunties and aunts were sitting and knitting, watching these boys having fun. These symbols, from 0 to 9, are the same as the numbers we usually use, except that they are written in a very simple way, much easier than the Chinese characters used by our accounting teachers. Little scholars should know these things. Suchen said loudly. Well, every time my father writes about money and goods, he takes a long time to write. The little scholar immediately stood up and testified that his father is the only accountant in Sujiezai. At this time, the little scholar's father Sushunshen also gathered around and looked at the adult-like look on the young host's young face. He couldn't help but smile. Get up. But he didn't pay much attention to the ghostly drawings on the door panel. Suchen nodded. Next, it's time to witness the miracle. Oops. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Online games, I really don't want to have unlimited fusion. Author, 7 years. Chapter 656. Chapter 656, Absorption and output are not proportional at all. All the older children immediately stretched their necks and stared at the young master's movements, hoping that the young master would conjure a flower. Ha ha ha. The aunties and aunts who were watching couldn't help but laugh out loud. These children are so cute. Ignoring the noise that ruined the atmosphere of the class, Suchen gave a serious lecture. Look. Put this 1 and this 0 together, it's 10. 10 on 10 fingers. Put 2 ones together, it's 11, put this 1 and 2 together, it's 12, turn 2 and 1 upside down, it's 21, put 1 and 2 zeros together, it's 100, and then add a 0, it's 1000, add another 0, it's 10,000. Suchen spoke faster and faster, and almost none of the older children below could keep up. Most of them stared at the circles on the door panel with wide eyes and confusion, watching the Xiaodong family spitting everywhere. The aunts and uncles were whispering to each other, not knowing what they were talking about, but Su Shunsheng on the side became slightly interested and looked at the symbols more seriously. Su Chen looked at the staring students below and suddenly felt like he was talking to a duck. He had to endure it and start talking to everyone again. That night, Su Chen taught them the symbols from 0 to 9 10 times. In the end, several aunts couldn't help but ran over to point out the mistakes of some children. That's not 1 or 12, that's 21. How stupid. After this night of teaching, Suchen realized that the teachers used to distinguish between there are reasons for good students and bad students. The saying rotten wood cannot be carved is very scientific. Like a little scholar, he basically learned it the first time he was taught. As for Hyuze, that pig, he couldn't tell the difference between putting 2 in front or 1 in front even after he handed it over 10 times. Well, it takes 10 years to grow trees and 100 years to cultivate people. I can't let these naughty kids knock me down. I have to calm down. I will be a grandmaster in the future, but I can't let this little obstacle stop me. Suchen hugged the door panel and secretly cheered himself up. When he got home, his father didn't ask his son why he did those things. In his opinion, what his son taught was secondary. What was important was that his son started at this time. He has preliminary organizational skills. This is what he values most. My Suhu's son will definitely be the owner of Sujiazai in the future. These changes in his son made him feel a little relieved. After sleeping until midnight, Suchen woke up hungry. I could only get up and go to the kitchen to find something to eat. Unfortunately, apart from some cold dried rice, there were only some vegetable leaves, onions and the like left in the kitchen. I had no choice but to light a fire and make some fried rice. Fortunately, Suchen was born in a rural area. When he was in his 20s, the firewood stove at home was still in use. But it was the first time for Suchen to use the fire plate. When he blew it hard, the flames almost burned his hair. The rice was fried with a clanging sound. Suchen, who was sitting on the threshold holding a large bowl of fried rice and munching frantically, was very puzzled. The absorption and output are not proportional at all. How much did he eat in one day today? But every time he gets hungry within 2 hours. It's really damn it. Looking up at the moon in the sky, Suchen suddenly felt sad. I don't know if there would be a soul-possessed eye in the world in my previous life. If not, the parents in that world must be very, very sad. Online games, I really don't want to have unlimited fusion. Author, 7 years. Chapter 657. Chapter 657 Making Cement. Early the next morning, the martial arts training ground was filled with shouts and shouts. The reason why bandits are bandits is because farmers have force value. How to ensure your own force value, you must practice unremittingly every day. Suchen saw the lively scene in the field and joined them energetically. Different from the previous feeling of powerlessness in my memory, this time when I exercised, my whole body seemed to have endless energy. The more I practiced, the more energetic I became, and the more I practiced, the more energetic I became. Call. Ha. As the movements unfolded, Suchen took advantage of the situation and exhaled. Ha, the young master is in very good spirits today. Many people looked at the young man in the field in surprise and said to each other. Suhu also noticed his son's condition today and was filled with joy. Nothing made him happier than seeing his son healthy and active. Lian, after finishing the martial arts, everyone went to the fields where they should go, stepped on the spots where they needed to be, and robbed where they needed to be. Suchen went home and ate a large bowl full of porridge and 5 eggs. He was satisfied and called the 5 teenagers to go to the place where the land was being prepared yesterday. Place. Everyone stepped hard on the ground for a long time, and there was already a lot of water where the small trench was dug. This water cannot exist when piling, otherwise it will cause great damage to the foundation. In ancient times, it should be used a layer of liuhi soil can be waterproofed, similar to the effect of cement. What Suchen has to do today is to make cement. Cement is taught in high school chemistry. It uses limestone and clay as the main raw materials, and is crushed, batched, and ground. It is made into raw meal, fed into a cement kiln to calcine clinker, and then an appropriate amount of gypsum, sometimes mixed with mixed materials or additives, is added and ground into fine particles. The chemistry book also includes a black and white photo of the conversion furnace, but this it is impossible for Suchen to make the equipment. Limestone, Suchen has never carefully identified what kind of stone it is, but things like limestone, clay, gypsum, etc. should be very common in ancient times. I haven't seen it often in movies and TV dramas. The villain's sprinkling of lime makes people's eyes narrow. As for clay, isn't it used to make pottery? Gypsum is used to make tofu, and it is also a medicine in Chinese medicine. This is already made. I haven't said anything, ask an adult to ask for it, and read it first. Let's see what they are like. There are a lot of lime and gypsum in the village. Suchan picked up a load and went back. Clay was a bit difficult to work with. There was no ready-made one in the village. With the guidance of several uncles, he finally found it at the foot of the mountain. A lot was dug up in one place. The raw materials were all available, and only God knew how to mix them. Suchan had no choice but to randomly choose 3 mixing methods, and first smashed large chunks of limestone into pieces. So far, Suchan and the others don't have anything to grind these limestones, so they can only smash them as much as possible. There is nothing we can do about the lumps of clay. It will take several days to wait for it to dry. Let's burn it, as much as it is dry. Then weigh the scale, mix the limestone and clay according to weight, and stir it evenly. Then it's calcining. Damn it! What to use for calcining? Look at the appearance of this clay, and think about the ancient Chinese calcining that I have learned before. The temperature of ceramics must be more than 1,000 degrees. Damn, how can this traditional method reach more than 1,000 degrees? There is no way. First get a basin of charcoal, pile it in a circle with a few stones, and put it at the bottom. Lay it out with stones and put charcoal on it to burn. Online games, I really don't want to have unlimited fusion. Author, 7 years. Chapter 658. Chapter 658, Burning Limestone. When it's almost burning, open some space in the middle of the charcoal and put some of the prepared limestone powder and clay powder into it. Then a big stone slab was brought and the earth and stone stove was covered. Looking at the earth and stone stove that was leaking air everywhere, the teenagers were all excited and excitedly discussing what interesting things would come out of it. Suchan raised his head and looked at the sky, crying silently in his heart. If it can be fired successfully, one possibility is that lime is mixed with clay to lower the temperature at which the clay sinters. However, is this possible? It seems that after more than 10 years of studying, the teacher has never told such magical things, right? Limestone can also be used as a catalyst to lower the melting temperature. When working people in ancient times used clay to make porcelain, they built stoves with such good sealing properties just to increase the temperature for burning charcoal. It was not easy to sinter clay. Therefore, Suchan didn't have high hopes for the earth-stone furnace to burn cement. An hour passed, and Suchan saw that the charcoal inside was almost burning. He called over the teenagers who were playing in the water, climbing trees, and quarreling. They used thicker branches to pry open the hot stone slabs, and then they couldn't wait to look inside. Well, in the middle of the burnt charcoal, there is a pile of gray-white powder mixed with many dark brown dried mud particles. Don't look at it, it's definitely not burned. Brother said that this clay is not easy to burn. Those dark brown mud particles are the clay from before. Pushing aside the unburned charcoal, carefully moved the gray-white powder to a clean stone, cooled it, and then put a little bit of the gray-white powder on the palm of his hand and dripped some water on it. Hot, the limestone is almost there. Suchan felt the temperature in the palm of his hand. In his previous life, his father was a plasterer. When mixing lime, his father always told the children to go away. Because when lime and water are mixed together, a lot of heat will be released. Chemistry teacher during class, I also told everyone not to get lime into their eyes, and not to wash them with water, otherwise they will burn. Clay is not easy to burn, so just don't use clay. Suchan will no longer experiment with the remaining 2 proportions. Limestone and clay, directly mix the burned lime and powdered gypsum together. Okay. The cement is made. Mix the cement with water until it becomes thick, throw in a few pebbles, mix well, and then let it. I did it myself. Sand is usually used when making cement at construction sites, but where can I get sand in these mountains? There were several sand dredging boats in the two rivers around my hometown in my previous life. Let's go and have a look in the river at the bottom of the mountain. It should be able to seeing the sand. After doing this, Suchen took everyone back. The little scholar asked what the lump was, but Suchen didn't answer. He was still not sure whether the so-called cement was real cement or whether it could be solidification. Everything will have to wait until tomorrow to know. Looking at the sky, there is still some time before lunch. Suchen asked 5 friends to carry the empty load and follow the stream to the foot of the mountain. When the stream reaches the foot of the mountain, it will gather several streams and springs, then the water flow increased and became a large river. This river flows around several mountains and flows southeast. It is said that it will eventually merge into the Lu River and then into the Gan River. Suchen easily a lot of river sand was found on both sides of the river, but there was a lot of mud in it. Fe. Lu reminds you, 3 things about reading: collect, recommend, and share. N. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Online games, I really don't want to have unlimited fusion. Author, 7 years. Chapter 659. Chapter 659, Pay attention to class discipline. I didn't say anything, just use a hoe to dig it up, hold the sand in my hands and load it into the load. When it's almost done, pick up the sand and find a stone with a flat bottom, pour the sand on the flat ground, and let it dry naturally. Before lunch, Suchen and his friends dried several loads of sand. The sand is mixed with rocks and pebbles. Suchen remembered that in his previous life, when his father was working, he would put an iron sieve in front of him and shovel sand directly onto the iron sieve. What leaks out is relatively good construction sand, and what is blocked is gravel. Iron sieves were difficult to come by in the Ming dynasty, so let's build a bamboo sieve. Anyway, there is a lot of bamboo and it's not worth much. There are too many large and short bamboos in the mountains around Sujiazai, and they are all free of charge. Even if we ask for money, who on the surrounding hills dares to ask for money from our bandits? On the way home, we discussed with everyone and asked some older brothers to help us. We chopped bamboo and the older brothers who were good at crafts helped to weave the bamboo sieve. It had better be solid, otherwise it would break after only a few uses. After lunch, Suchen and the others happily ran to the bamboo forest to chop bamboo with their wood chopping knives on their shoulders. An uncle asked Suchen what these young men were doing. After thinking about it, he told Suchen, "Young master, take this bottle of medicinal wine with you. Inside is green bamboo leaves soaked in old wine. The most feared thing in the bamboo forest is the green bamboo leaves. If you bite it, it will be terrible. Zuyekeng is the most venomous snake in the bamboo forest. It is small and has a color similar to bamboo. If it is bitten, it is basically life-threatening." Suchen thanked his uncle, took the medicinal wine and went to the bamboo forest, and warned everyone pay attention to the snakes in the bamboo. Fortunately, we came here in the afternoon and cut more than 10 bamboos, so everyone was safe. It was easy to cut the bamboo, but it was difficult to drag it back. We were all 14 or 15-year-old boys with just healthy bodies. It started to take a long time, and it looked like there was too much energy, but the strength was not very big, and it didn't last long. Moreover, we were walking on a mountain road, and we had to cross 2 mountains to drag it back. It was almost dark, and the 6 of us were as tired as dogs, and we only dragged 8 people back. Big bamboos. These big bamboos were all 11 or 12 meters long. The branches and leaves were cut off before being dragged back. They were piled under the houses of a few elder brothers who were willing to help. Everyone went home to have dinner. In the evening, it was as usual, it's the beginning of the class. Although the results of yesterday's class were very poor, the enthusiasm of the friends is very high. There are few entertainment methods in the mountains. In addition to visiting the house at night, I just fall asleep. The beginning of the class at Sheadong's house is one thing. The friends can gather together, it's another thing to be together. We are all of the same age, so we can have a lot of fun just bragging. In this class, in addition to many more teenagers and children, there are also a lot of adults around. Father Suhu and several uncles directly moved chairs and sat in the back, laughing and watching Suchen shouting at the top of his voice to pay attention to class discipline. This time Suchen came to class well prepared and prepared a bunch of a very small branch, specially used to throw those guys who don't pay attention in class. Okay. Classes begin. Classes begin. Stop talking. Suchen slapped the door panel and yelled, "Today, let's review yesterday's lesson. You are a bastard, you were the least interested in me yesterday, and now you are still bragging to me. I'm going to beat you up." Bah! A small branch was thrown right on Hughes's head, and the surrounding people burst into laughter. Online games, I really don't want to have unlimited fusion. Author, 7 years. Chapter 660. Chapter 660. My boss is good at everything, but his temper is too rough. Except for a few students, everyone has a good grasp of the content of yesterday's class. Little scholar, those who don't know how to do it will be left to you. You must teach them. If they disobey, report to me, and I will ask my brother to do 100 push-ups. Good. Teacher, the little scholar's eyes were bright, and he accepted this task very happily. Suchen nodded with satisfaction, pointed to the 10 numbers on the door panel and said, "These symbols are just a simple way of expression. However, if you want to use them in real life, you are missing an important rule. This rule, I call it the 4 arithmetic operations rule. Before teaching you the 4 operations, I will teach you 4 new symbols: addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. Everyone knows addition and subtraction. This is easy to understand, but multiplication and division are a bit difficult. First of all, what is multiplication? For example, today we went to chop bamboo. Hughesy and I each chopped 3 bamboos, which is a total of 6 bamboos. Then I define that 2 people times 3 bamboos, 2 times 3, equals 6. Suchen spoke very slowly, looking at the expressions of the students as he spoke. Sure enough, everyone, including the little scholars, looked like they were curious about the baby. There was no other way but to tell it a few more times. After all, these guys will be part of my future empire in the future. The first generation of high-quality talents. If you teach them well, it will be easy for me later. It was hard to talk about it, but Suchen finally made some students understand the meaning of addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. Then he put a stack of paper prepared in advance. He sent it down and said loudly, "Students, be sure to keep these papers. What is written above is a multiplication table. It contains multiplication tables for each number from 0 to 9. I will give you 2 days to memorize it. I will check it then." The uncles sitting in the back curiously asked for a few multiplication tables, and were amazed at the dozens of groups of numbers arranged in triangles. The second in command of Sujiazai, Uncle Rong, said to his boss, "My boss, when will my young boss understand? Got these things?" Su, who said carelessly, "I don't know, maybe he made it up. Anyway, just let this kid do whatever he wants, Su." Shunsheng on the side stared at the multiplication table on the paper and said with a serious expression, "Master, I'm sure the young master is not joking." Suhu raised his thick eyebrows and said, "Oh, what do you think, sir?" Su Shunsheng stared at the various symbols on the door panel and said, The addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division mentioned by the Xiaodong family have already been explained in the 9 chapters of arithmetic. This multiplication formula should have been borrowed from the 9 chapters of arithmetic by the Xiaodong family, and it was definitely not made up randomly. I just don't know, where did the Xiaodong family learn these calculation methods, and how did they learn those symbols and numbers? I've never taught him before. Wa ha ha ha. Suhu patted the chair and laughed loudly. Doesn't that mean that my son is self-taught without a teacher, a teenage prodigy? Wa ha ha ha. This boy makes his father look good. Ha ha ha. Su Shen, who was standing aside, shook his head helplessly. My boss is good at everything, but his temper is too rough. After class, everyone continued to brag for a while and then went to sleep. In the middle of the night, Su Chen woke up from hunger and went to the kitchen to mess around for a while. Then he came back and went back to sleep. An ordinary day passed again. The next day, after morning exercises and breakfast, Su Chen and the teenagers went to the stream to see the degree of solidification of the cement.